The story opens in Viking Age Denmark, where a giant named Grendel lives peacefully atop a mountain with his young son. One day, King Hrothgar, the chieftain of the Danish tribe, arrives on horseback with his warriors, intent on killing the giant. Giant sees them approaching from afar and, desperate to protect his child, lifts the boy and flees toward the far side of the mountain. The warriors soon surround him, so Giant hides his son along the rocky slope and tries to frighten the men away rather than fight them, hoping they will retreat. They refuse to leave, and instead attack him with arrows, spears, and flaming torches. Losing his footing, Grendel falls from the mountain and dies instantly. From his hiding place, the young boy watches silently. Hrothgar then steps to the edge, removes his mask, and notices the child below. For a brief moment, he considers killing him as well, but seeing that the creature is only a baby, he spares him and rides away without informing his men. The child climbs down the mountain and finds his father's lifeless body near the sea. Unable to move it or protect it from scavenging birds, he eventually uses a sword to cut the body apart and drags the pieces into a cave, where he hides them and grows up alone. Years pass, and the boy becomes an adult, but each day he mourns his father, staring at his severed head in grief. Back in the Danish village, a priest conducts a ceremony to mark the opening of a new mead hall, announcing to Hrothgar that it is ready. At the same time, Grendel, who has waited years to avenge his father, finally leaves his cave. That night, as Danish warriors drink and celebrate inside the hall, Grendel kills the guard outside by crushing his skull, then enters and slaughters every man inside with savage brutality. The next morning, Hrothgar arrives with his warriors and is horrified by the sight of the mutilated bodies scattered everywhere. He asks his commander where he was during the attack, and the man replies that he was in the village, explaining that a few young men had stayed behind to drink, but he does not know who killed them so cruelly. Strangely, no women or elders were harmed, which deeply unsettles Hrothgar. The scene then shifts to Geatland, where Beowulf, a renowned warrior, leads his men on raids by sea, until harsh weather forces them to stop near Denmark. That same night, Hrothgar goes to the mountain with his guard and calls out to Grendel, challenging him. After a few steps, Grendel suddenly appears from behind and kills the guard with a single blow. Hrothgar charges with his sword, but Grendel escapes once again, leaving Hrothgar confused as to why the creature never confronts him directly and instead kills only his men before fleeing. The following morning, the tribe gathers at the site of the killings, and Hrothgar's wife, Wealhtheow, laments that so many Viking men have died that soon only widows will remain. Hrothgar has no answer and stands in silence, ashamed. Later, Wealhtheow visits Lena, a woman living alone in the mountains who is believed to foresee death. She asks if her husband will die the same way. Lena bitterly reminds her that the village cast her out as corrupt, but finally tells her that Hrothgar will not be killed by Grendel. With that, Wealhtheow quietly returns home. Meanwhile, the Geatland Vikings, led by Beowulf, sail forward and come ashore near the Danish settlement. When a mounted Danish soldier spots them, he warns, "This land is also Viking territory. If you've come to raid, turn back at once." Beowulf answers calmly, "I am Beowulf, the well-known Viking warrior. We only seek rest here for a few days during our journey. We have no intention of plundering." The soldier responds that he has heard much about Beowulf and offers to escort him to meet their chief. Beowulf and his men are brought before the chief, who welcomes him warmly and says, "The last time I saw your father, you were just a boy. Now you stand before me as a great warrior." Beowulf quietly acknowledges this. That night, the chief hosts a feast in the mead hall in honor of Beowulf and his warriors, and the chief's wife personally serves the drinks. During the celebration, Beowulf asks why there are so many widows and so few men in the village. The chief explains the nightly attacks by the troll. Hearing this, Beowulf declares that if the troll comes every night to kill Viking men, then he and his warriors will wait for him from now on. After the feast, the chief, his wife, and the others return to their homes, while Beowulf, his men, and a few warriors from the tribe remain in the tavern. Around midnight, the troll approaches the building, first sniffing near a priest, and then moving to the door, testing the scent to determine whether those inside are locals or outsiders. Inside, Beowulf and his warriors realize the troll has arrived and prepare themselves for battle. However, the troll senses that the men within are not local Vikings, and instead of entering, he urinates on the closed door. By the time the warriors rush outside to attack, the troll has already disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, the chief remarks to Beowulf that it is strange no one was killed during the night. Beowulf agrees, explaining that the troll came to the door but chose to leave without fighting. Afterward, Beowulf sets out with several of his own men and a few from the tribe to search the hills for the troll, hoping to kill him, but after covering many areas and finding nothing, they return to the village. Later, Beowulf goes alone to meet Lena. He tells her he has heard she can foresee death. Lena confirms this and says she also knows he is Beowulf, the famous warrior, then asks why he has come. Beowulf explains that he wants to know how many will die in the conflict between the troll and the Vikings, and whether the troll himself will be killed, because he wishes to protect the people. Elena replies that she is not one of those people, revealing that when she was young, the chief's nephew brought her there and forced her into a life of disgrace. She then tells Beowulf she has seen the future. The troll will be slain, but many Vikings will also die, and the land will be soaked in blood, adding that the people deserve no better. When Beowulf asks why, she answers that this is the punishment for what they did to the troll and warns him to stay out of it. Before he can question her further, his men arrive to find him and say that evening is approaching and they must prepare. Beowulf returns with them to the village. Later, he speaks privately with the chief and asks whether the troll has ever killed a woman, child, or elder. The chief replies that he has not, and that only Viking men have died. Beowulf remarks that this suggests the creature is intelligent and even restrained in its own way, which surprises the chief, who accuses Beowulf of praising a killer. Beowulf clarifies that he is not praising the troll, only noting that there must be a reason he targets only men and has never attacked the villagers directly. The chief then says that a troll was killed 20 years earlier, and none were seen after that, and he does not know where this one came from, adding that if Beowulf is afraid, he should not fight. That night, Beowulf and his warriors once again wait inside the tavern for the troll. When they hear signs of his arrival, they rush outside with swords drawn, but once more he is nowhere to be found. Frustrated, they turn back toward the tavern, unaware that the troll quietly slips out from behind the rocks and retreats to his hiding place. The following day, Beowulf goes to see Lena again and asks her, "Tell me how the troll can be defeated." Lena responds by asking why he does not simply leave with his men. Beowulf answers that before he goes, he must learn how the people can be freed from the troll's terror. Lena then leads him into her hut and casts her fortune bones in search of an answer. At that moment, Beowulf hears the troll's voice outside and rushes out, but when the troll sees him, it immediately flees. Beowulf mounts his horse and chases after it, yet before he can catch up, the troll climbs the mountain. Lena follows and reaches the mountain as well. Beowulf calls out, challenging the creature and asking why it keeps running instead of facing him. The troll replies in its own language, which Lena understands and translates. She explains that the troll says his struggle is not with Beowulf, because neither he nor his men have ever harmed him, which is why the troll has never attacked them. Surprised, Beowulf returns with Lena to her hut and asks why the troll continues to roam the area. Lena explains that the chief's nephew once forced her into a life of disgrace and later died in her bed, after which the villagers blamed her for his death and cast her out. Since then, she has lived alone, and Viking men used to come nightly to abuse her, but ever since the troll began appearing, none of them dared to return. For this reason, she refuses to help kill the troll, saying the creature has already suffered enough. After learning this, Beowulf goes back to the chief and tells him that through Lena, he learned the Vikings treated the troll cruelly, and that the troll is seeking revenge. The chief grows uneasy and says they will speak of it later. As Beowulf leaves to rejoin his men, he sees a crippled man being brutally beaten by children and drives them away. The man then tells Beowulf that his father fought the troll's father, which is why the troll slaughtered the men of his family, and claims he knows where the troll's cave is and can lead them there. Beowulf and his warriors set out by boat toward the mountain where the cave lies, guided by the crippled man. They land near the shore and climb the mountain until they reach the cave's only entrance. One Viking attempts to climb down but slips, and the others quickly pull him back up. After that, none of them dare to enter. Instead, they urinate near the entrance and begin heading back to the boat. Suddenly, the hidden troll bursts out from beneath the water and attacks the Viking who relieved himself near the cave, trying to kill him, but the others strike quickly and force the troll back under the water, saving the man's life. The group then returns to the tavern and waits through the night, but the troll does not appear. The next morning, Beowulf steps outside and discovers that the troll has killed the crippled man who showed them the way. Shocked, Beowulf and the Vikings decide to return to the cave, this time using ropes to reach the entrance. Inside, they find strange objects scattered about, and one Viking smashes the skull of the troll's father and urinates on it. The troll is absent, but when he returns and sees the shattered skull, he immediately knows intruders have been there. Enraged by the desecration of his father's remains, the troll becomes consumed with fury. That evening, while the Vikings sleep in the tavern, the troll attacks savagely, killing the man who broke his father's skull. Beowulf then joins the fight, but he is no match for the troll's strength. As the troll tries to escape through the roof, Beowulf grabs his leg and drags him back, wrapping a heavy iron chain around his arm. Furious, the troll strikes Beowulf and struggles to break free, but his arm becomes trapped in the chain. A Viking fires an arrow at him, which the troll knocks aside, and before the others can strike, the troll severs his own hand to escape. He flees toward the sea but collapses and dies on the shore, and moments later, his body is suddenly dragged beneath the water by an unseen force. The following day, the Vikings grieve for their fallen warriors and burn their bodies on a funeral pyre. Beowulf turns to the chief and says, "You only told me part of the truth. Now that the troll is dead, you owe me the whole story." The chief confesses that they once killed the troll's father without cause, and that everything happening now is the price they must pay. Beowulf responds that because of their way of thinking, an innocent was murdered, and unlike them, the troll never harmed the helpless. Hearing this, the chief is filled with shame. That night, the Vikings hang the troll's severed hand inside the tavern and celebrate, convinced the threat is finally over. Afterward, most of them return to their homes. Beowulf then goes to see Lena, who tells him that as she foretold, the troll is gone, but Beowulf himself still has suffering ahead. She reveals more of her past, explaining that years earlier, the troll came to her and was with her once but never touched her again afterward, and from that time on, the Vikings stopped tormenting her. She says the troll was not evil, only burdened by the pain of his childhood. As they speak, Lena and Beowulf grow closer and fall into each other's arms. At midnight, the troll's mother storms into the village, killing a priest along the way. She enters the tavern and massacres all the Vikings inside, then takes her son's severed hand and disappears. The next morning, a young boy secretly approaches Lena. She tells him to stay silent and quietly leaves with him. Meanwhile, the Vikings believe the troll is still alive and responsible for the new massacre, and they begin hunting for him. At the shoreline, they discover another severed head, which strengthens Beowulf's suspicion that something is wrong. Believing the troll may still be alive, Beowulf rushes alone into the cave, diving beneath the water. Inside, he finds the troll's body lying on a rock, but as he steps closer, the troll's mother suddenly attacks him from behind and begins to strangle him. Beowulf grabs a stone and smashes it against her head, then takes a sword and kills her. At that moment, the young boy appears holding a sword. Seeing him, Beowulf realizes the truth, that the boy is the son of Lena and the troll. He lowers his weapon and spares the child. Later, Beowulf returns to the tribe and tells the chief that he is leaving, as both the troll and his mother are truly dead. Before departing, he meets Lena one last time and warns her that if people discover the troll had a son, they will kill them both. Lena calmly replies that the secret will remain only between them and walks away. In the end, Beowulf builds graves for the troll and his mother outside Lena's hut, while from a distance the troll's son watches in tears. Beowulf then leaves with his men and sails back to Geatland, bringing the story to a close. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching.